Amazingly inspiring, she discovers an injured horse and transforms their lives with a makeshift animal shelter. Dust stirred as Sarah Thompson wandered through the familiar roads of her small Nebraska hometown, her heart heavy with uncertainty. The laughter and warmth of childhood memories surrounded her like whispers in the air, yet the intimacy of the past felt suffocating now. How could she claim her place when every corner of the town seemed to echo the underestimated girl she'd always been? With a fresh degree in hand from a prestigious university, the world had promised her a chance, but here she was, lost, grappling with the fragments of her dreams. In the distance, she caught sight of a neglected pasture, its grass withered by the relentless summer sun. Something caught her eye, a horse lying in the dirt, ribs protruding like a painful reminder of neglect. She approached cautiously, her heart aching as she knelt beside the creature. "I'll call you Rusty," she murmured, feeling an inexplicable bond form between them despite the odds stacked against them both. This chance encounter lit a flicker of resolve. If she could save Rusty, perhaps she could prove her worth. Perhaps this was her purpose. But the weight of doubt pressed down on her. Would the townsfolk, who had always regarded her as an outsider, ever take her seriously? Just a waste of time, they'd say with a chuckle. Her own family, while supportive, was grappling with financial concerns. Their love felt like a tether, but their limited means suffocated her ambition. As she brushed a gentle hand across Rusty's frail body, she felt a deep-rooted fear rising within her, to fail not just him, but herself. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into a blur of sweat and hope as she tended to Rusty, but the snickers and side glances from the townsfolk only grew louder. They hadn't forgotten the girl who left, but returned as an impulse-driven dreamer. Each patient hour spent nurturing his recovery seemed to be met with the resentment of a local rancher who loathed outsiders. "You think you can change things around here?" he scoffed one afternoon, his voice dripping with contempt. Anger simmered within her. She wasn't going to let him crush her resolve. The nights wore on, filled with dread as Rusty began to worsen. Sarah's heart raced with a mix of fierce determination and paralyzing despair. As she raised her eyes to watch his fading spirit, the heaviness of looming failure pressed around her like a vice. She could feel every doubt gnawing at her confidence, whispering that she wasn't enough, that she would never be more than just that girl who tried, yet always fell short. Standing at the threshold of the barn, the rancid scent of fear seeped into her resolve as she wavered. Could she face the truth that her greatest venture might also become her most painful defeat? She looked at Rusty, his frail form a heartbreaking reflection of her own struggle. She realized this was no longer just about saving a horse. It was about reclaiming a sense of belonging, a chance to rise beyond the shadows of her past. With everything at stake, she stood paralyzed at that intersection of desperation and hope, wondering if the fight for her dreams, and for Rusty, would ultimately lead to salvation or heartache. The question of whether she could truly prove herself now loomed larger than ever, igniting a firestorm of uncertainty deep within her. The only certainty she could cling to was that the impending choice would change everything. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue on the barn, its warmth seeping into Sarah's skin but failing to thaw the ice of anxiety that gripped her heart. Each day spent caring for Rusty felt like a battleground, where hope and despair fought for supremacy. As she filled his trough with water, her shaking hands betrayed her internal chaos. What if she was just prolonging the inevitable? The thought turned in her mind like a relentless storm. She recalled every discouraging word hurled her way, every skeptical glance that threatened to crush her resolve. Yet here she was, standing firm in the face of her own fears. A flicker of defiance ignited within her when she thought about Rusty, a creature who had suffered more than she ever had. If he could show signs of fight, she could too. She wouldn't let Rusty down. He was more than a project. He was a lifeline. After hours of tending, she realized that Rusty required a much more significant intervention. She began to strategize, outlining a plan to consult a veterinarian. Gathering the courage to seek help felt monumental. It meant admitting that she couldn't do this alone. Can't fail, she murmured to herself, echoing the mantra like a lifeline. Maybe reaching out for help was a form of strength, not weakness. As she walked into town later, her resolve began to crack. Thoughts of judgment loomed like shadows, and every familiar face felt like potential ridicule. The local rancher's words replayed in her mind, a mantra of doubt attempting to anchor her in the past. Yet beneath the rising tide of fear, a sense of agency emerged. She could be more, a resourceful, determined woman ready to fight for what mattered. Entering the veterinary clinic felt surreal. The service area was bustling with pet owners distracted by their own concerns. Tranquil sounds of gentle barks and soft meows filled the air, yet all she could hear were the quickened beats of her heart. What if she found the vet wouldn't take her concerns seriously? She swallowed hard, fueled by deeper motivation. She was here for Rusty, for herself. "Hi," she stammered, her voice unsteady but resolute. "I found a horse, and he needs care. He's in terrible condition." As the vet's expression shifted to one of concern, a weight began to lift off her chest. The vet's questions about her knowledge and the horse's condition sparked something within, an unexpected confidence. She spoke with clarity about Rusty's symptoms and needs, piecing together her thoughts with an assertiveness she hadn't known she possessed. As the vet examined Rusty's condition with her at his side, something began to shift. She felt a sense of connection to the responsibility, the empowerment that came with taking actionable steps toward change. "Looks like I should help you," the veterinarian said, making notes and instructing her on a treatment plan. Relief washed over Sarah like cool water. This was the validation she desperately sought. She could make a difference, not just for Rusty but for herself as well. The next days were pivotal. Returning to the barn with fresh supplies and knowledge, Sarah dove headfirst into her new role. The preliminary signs of recovery in Rusty bolstered her spirits. She was gaining more than just skills. She was slowly reclaiming her narrative piece by piece. Galvanized by her success, she started documenting her journey, initially for herself, but soon considering sharing it with the town. But just as her confidence flourished, the rancher returned. Confrontation simmered in the air as he eyed her renewed determination, his disdain palpable. "Still think you can save him?" he taunted, a dismissive smirk plastered on his face. That moment was a crossroads. It was more than Rusty's fate on the line. It was her burgeoning identity. The time had come to confront not just him, but everything he represented. Every doubt, every scoff from the past loomed behind him, threatening to swallow her whole. Would she falter under his jeer, or would she rise to the occasion, ready to fight for Rusty and herself? The rancher's words hung in the air like a challenge, electrifying the space between them. Sarah squared her shoulders, drawing on the newly discovered resilience that burgeoned within her. She was no longer the timid girl who had faced scorn. She was a caretaker, a fighter, and Rusty's advocate. "Why wouldn't I?" she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The rancher's brow furrowed, and she caught a flicker of surprise within his hardened demeanor. For once, the contempt that usually laced his tone faltered, replaced by a momentary uncertainty. She took a step forward, a symbolic act of defiance. "Just because you think I can't, doesn't mean I won't." For the first time, she realized this confrontation was not about winning the rancher's respect. It was about claiming her own. As she watched him grapple with her confidence, a rush of adrenaline surged through her. The more she stood her ground, the more she felt the weight of expectation lift. This moment was about Rusty, but it had transformed into a declaration of her self-worth. The rancher scoffed, shaking his head. "You're in over your head, girl. I'll be waiting for the day you admit defeat." She turned away, refusing to let his words penetrate her resolve. Inside, the turmoil still churned, but it was now fueled by the embers of determination rather than despair. Everything she had invested in Rusty couldn't be erased by a few dismissive remarks. Instead, she felt a surge of clarity. Every care she offered Rusty wasn't just about his survival, but a testament to her growth. As days turned into weeks, Sarah followed the veterinarian's treatment plans diligently, using every resource available to her. Her nights were spent reading books on horse care, while her mornings were filled with hands-on learning as she administered medications, adjusted feed, and monitored Rusty's mental state. Each small victory, the way Rusty nickered at her when she entered the barn or turned eagerly toward food, strengthened her belief in what she was capable of. But there were hiccups along the way. One afternoon, she noticed Rusty seemed lethargic again, his body weakening despite her careful attention. Panic clawed at her chest as she called the veterinarian, her mind racing with doubts. Had she mismanaged something? Was she going to lose him? She was acutely aware of the internal battle raging inside, to succumb to fear or lean into her newfound optimism. "Just breathe," she told herself as she sat still beside the horse, feeling the warmth of his body underneath her palm, grounding her. Each breath became a soothing balm as she projected calmness onto Rusty. "You can handle this." When the vet arrived, their conversation revealed new insights. Rusty might be having an adverse reaction to one of the medications, a detail she had missed. The veterinarian praised her observation skills and urged her to trust her instincts moving forward. That echoed in her mind long after he left, a piece of wisdom she had once ignored. With renewed determination, she dove back into her routine, adjusting Rusty's regimen and exploring natural alternatives as instructed. The mutual bond between them deepened with every encounter. For Sarah, it transformed from a task to a partnership, a relationship built on trust and hope. She was no longer just fighting for Rusty's recovery. She was gaining a deeper understanding of herself, of the strength that lay within her unexpected resilience. The next day, as she labeled another entry in her journal reflecting Rusty's progress, she paused. What had begun as a desperate bid to save a horse had ignited a flame of potential in her own life. She felt invigorated, eager to share her journey and perhaps inspire others in the community. But as she finalized her thoughts, a knock on the barn door interrupted her. She turned to find the rancher standing there, face darkened with an unreadable expression. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. Confusion fizzled with anticipation within her. Had he truly come to threaten her again, or was there something else hidden behind his stoic facade? This time, standing unlike before, Sarah was ready. The moment had arrived to confront the rattling shadows of her past, and she clenched her fists, bracing for what lay ahead. The rancher stepped into the barn, the shadows of the afternoon sun casting a somber atmosphere. Sarah felt the air shift around her. It was thick with confrontation but buzzing with potential resolution. Despite her readiness, uncertainty flared inside her. What could he possibly want now? She steadied herself, remembering Rusty and the fight they had ahead. "Is this about Rusty?" she asked, her tone firm yet curious. She needed to avoid the trap of fear, to keep the rancher from seeing her as anything less than his equal. He glanced sideways, avoiding her gaze. "It's about more than that. You're not the only one fighting a battle here." His voice was clipped, each word measured, revealing fragments of a deeper internal struggle she hadn't anticipated. "What do you mean?" she pressed, curiosity mingling with the lingering tension. She sensed the opening of a dialogue, a shift in their dynamic that could be significant. Not just for her, but for him too. His hands shoved into his pockets as he hesitated. "I've seen people come and go. Most give up at the first sign of trouble." A flash of vulnerability flickered across his hardened eyes. "But you actually care. It makes me wonder if I've been wrong all along." Sarah's heart raced. She understood this was more than an apology. It was a reflection of his own insecurities. "Caring isn't a weakness," she replied, letting the weight of her words anchor her. "It's a strength. Losing Rusty would break me, but giving him every chance to thrive makes every failure worthwhile. Don't you want that?" The rancher shifted, unease radiating off him. "Of course I do," he muttered, but there was resistance in his voice, a lingering doubt. "Then let's work together. Help me understand the decisions you've made on this ranch. Share your experience instead of holding it hostage." Her voice grew earnest, fueled by the lessons she had learned. It wasn't just about saving Rusty anymore. It was about growth, connection, overcoming barriers. She realized that by asking for his help, she was reclaiming her earlier confidence and creating a window for him. He hesitated again, a flicker of something, fear, regret, shimmering across his face. "I run things my way. It's worked for me." Why take a chance? Because doing the same thing over and over won't help either of us. The conviction in her voice surprised even her. You may think it's about control, but it's really about the connection. If we both care about this place and what happens here, let's figure it out together. The chase for power ends when you realize you're standing with someone. The rancher stared at her, a mix of admiration and skepticism, his brow furrowed as if he were evaluating a puzzle he couldn't solve. The silence stretched between them, intensifying the storm brewing in his mind. Finally, he took a step closer, the walls he had built around himself shuddering. You really believe in this, don't you? I do, she replied, unwavering. We both have a lot to prove, not just to each other but to ourselves. A moment passed, the tension hanging thick as he seemed to weigh her words. Then he nodded, albeit slowly, a fragile truce forming in the air. All right, he said finally, voice hoarse with the weight of unspoken vulnerabilities. Let's try it your way. This doesn't mean I'm suddenly your ally, but you've earned a chance. With those words, something shifted, a potential pathway opening not just to help Rusty, but also to possibly redefine their roles in this space. As he turned to leave, Sarah felt the faintest glimmer of hope. If nothing else, they had come to a mutually beneficial understanding. But would the rancher truly embrace this new way of thinking? As she stood watching him walk away, excitement curdled with apprehension. The journey ahead held challenges she couldn't begin to foresee. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, ready to embrace whatever lies ahead, but unprepared for the next hurdle. Would the rancher maintain his resolve, or would old habits choke their fragile alliance? As dusk settled over the barn, Sarah turned back to Rusty, needing to solidify her purpose. Would this partnership forge the necessary alloy for both horse and woman to flourish? The next step in her transformation loomed as a new reality edged closer, and she could almost touch it. Sarah stepped deeper into the barn. The coolness contrasted sharply against the day's lingering heat. Her thoughts were a cacophony of emotions. Excitement for the tentative alliance with the rancher, and an emerging anxiety over Rusty's condition. The dim light filtered through the cracks, illuminating the dust motes that danced slowly, much like her racing heart. Would the rancher truly shift his perspective, or had she merely been granted a temporary reprieve? The prospect that he might still cling to his rigid ways sent tendrils of doubt snaking through her resolve. But there was no turning back. She had opened the door to possibility. What lay beyond it remained uncertain. As she approached Rusty's stall, her focus sharpened. If her partnership with the rancher was to bloom, she needed to center her energy on healing Rusty. She placed a gentle hand on the horse's neck, feeling the warmth under his black coat. "We'll do this together, buddy," she murmured, conviction weaving through her voice. She closed her eyes, turning inward, her mind racing with plans. The vet's visit had revealed some of Rusty's limitations. Severely malnourished, and with a foot injury they hadn't diagnosed sooner, the recovery would require meticulous care and a strong support network. Today, she would build that network, even if she had to start it from scratch. The barn door creaked open, and a soft thud announced the arrival of the rancher, the air heavy with unspent words. He approached cautiously, glancing at Rusty with an unreadable expression. A chance to act. "I need your help," Sarah began, her voice firmer than she felt. "What do you expect me to do?" he replied, skepticism threading through his tone. "Share what you know. Teach me." The vulnerability in her request was real, but it was tethered to the conviction that their survival depended on cooperation. "I know you've handled horses like Rusty before. I can't afford to miss anything this time." He shifted from one foot to the other, concern flickering in his blue eyes before he masked it again. "I'm not a teacher," he said, but something told her he was beginning to question that assertion as he assessed the horse. "Maybe not, but you're a survivor. That's worth something. Your experience with this ranch and its demands could be invaluable." She inhaled, willing herself to remain steady. "I can't do this alone." She watched him wrestle with his decision, the tension coursing through the space like a live wire. At last he sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "Fine, I'll help, but don't think this changes everything." "It doesn't have to," she assured him, relief rushing through her. "This is just a start." As they worked together, she observed the rancher's quiet expertise with Rusty, how he detected the horse's body language, how he understood the rhythm of their routines. She was amazed by how knowledge flowed from him when the topic at hand was the horse. Each instinctive movement he made reinforced the bond they were forming. Every animal has its quirks, he explained, pointing to Rusty when the horse nickered in response to a flake of hay. Learn them, and you can unlock their potential. His words resonated, not just in the context of Rusty, but echoing back to their own dynamic. They were both riddled with quirks, histories, and past choices that influenced current behaviors. Yet, as much as they had to learn from each other, they were also unlearning the barriers they had both constructed. With each passing moment, Sarah felt herself growing bolder. The recovery plan for Rusty was taking shape in her mind, informed by both her understanding of the horse's needs and the rancher's insights. However, she still sensed the tension underlying their alliance. Was there enough goodwill to sustain this new approach, or would it collapse under the weight of past grievances? Home was a mystery now. Would the two of them remodel it together? As she glanced at the rancher adjusting Rusty's bandage, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Their journey had begun, but the road ahead was daunting, fraught with decisions that would test their limits. "Let's make this a win-win scenario," she said, her voice steady. "Our past doesn't have to dictate our future." He looked at her, and for a moment the shadows in his eyes were illuminated by a spark of recognition. But could he truly leave the past behind? Or was it destined to linger, a specter in the barn? The question hung in the air, vibrational, ready to unfold. What they were building needed to be more than just about the horse. It needed depth, understanding, and mutual respect. As they shared the responsibility of Rusty's care, Sarah could feel their intertwined destinies tightening like the reins in her hands. Would this be enough to lay the foundation for something lasting, or would old habits rise back up to tug them apart? The next morning, Sarah awoke with renewed purpose, the echoes of her resolve still alive in her mind. She had spent the night drafting a comprehensive recovery plan for Rusty, a blend of veterinary advice and the rancher's insights from the previous day. Strategy, she reminded herself, was key. It was not merely about acting, but also about effectively mobilizing resources. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, she could hear the faint sounds of the ranch stirring to life. With every sip, she braced herself for another day filled with possibilities and challenges. Would the rancher maintain his commitment? Would their collaboration deepen beyond the bare necessities they had established? The uncertainty pushed her from her comfort zone into the unknown. Sarah stepped outside, her boots crunching on the gravel path as she approached the barn. The morning light illuminated the space, revealing the dust floating serenely through the air, much like her own swirling thoughts. She found the rancher already in Rusty's stall, checking the bandage with meticulous care. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady as she stepped closer. He glanced up, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a neutral expression. "I didn't expect you to be here this early." "I believe it's going to be a long road," she replied, taking her place beside him. "We should maximize the time we have." "Guess we do need to keep an eye on him," he agreed, his tone slightly softer than before. As they worked side by side, she felt the rhythm of their task harmonize into a collaboration. Together, they cleaned Rusty's stall, Sarah noting the way the rancher handled the horse, deftly calming any apprehension in Rusty with gentle strokes and reassuring tones. It struck her. The rancher had a natural affinity for the animals. And with that realization, a thought struck her. They were not so different. Both were in need of recovery in their own rights. "Your technique is impressive," she ventured, watching him closely. "Have you ever thought about teaching a workshop? There's a lot you could share?" He paused, momentarily taken aback. "Why would anyone want to learn from me?" "You have a talent," she insisted, her conviction igniting. "What you do isn't just about handling horses, it's about understanding them. There are people out there who could learn a lot from your experience." He rubbed the back of his neck, the skepticism creeping back. "That's flattering, but I doubt I'm cut out for mentorship." "Why not? What's holding you back? Fear of failure?" The question startled them both, but Sarah pressed forward, hoping to break through the hesitance. "I get it. The past has its ways of wrapping around us, but what if teaching brought you confidence?" A flicker of something crossed his features, and for a moment she believed she might have struck a chord. They fell silent again, but the air buzzed with an unspoken dynamic. Was it too much to consider extending their alliance beyond mere survival? "Let's focus on Rusty for now," he replied finally. But the tension in the air had shifted slightly, the seeds of contemplation planted. The rest of the day unfolded in a blend of practical care and emotional undercurrents. As Sarah learned to recognize the subtleties of Rusty's recovery, she started to find herself too, gaining confidence with each small victory. After a particularly encouraging moment when Rusty nickered brightly after receiving his feed, she turned to the rancher. "See, we're making progress." He nodded, a hint of a smile breaking through his otherwise stoic demeanor. "Looks like he trusts you." "I trust you too," she admitted, reinforcing the bond they were forming. The words hung between them, loaded with possibilities. Yet even as she embraced this newfound sense of teamwork, a nagging doubt remained. Could this relationship withstand the tests ahead? Would she continue to unlock potential, not just in Rusty, but also in the rancher? The stakes felt high, with personal growth intertwined with mutual dependency. As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows danced across the barn, hinting at the complexities that still loomed. With Rusty's progress marking a turning point for her, Sarah sensed the momentum building energetically, yet it accompanied the daunting realization that they'd have to confront their pasts head-on. The following day promised new challenges and confrontations that could further shape their fates. Would they be able to overcome their fears, or would the weight of old grievances pull them back? The question loomed as they entered the barn, forging ahead into the unknown. The next morning arrived with a thick fog blanketing the ranch, the world muted and still, each breath laced with the scent of damp earth. Sarah took in the ethereal beauty outside her window, but her mind busily wrestled with thoughts of yesterday's subtle shifts in her relationship with the rancher. She couldn't shake the feeling that their dynamic was on the verge of evolution. She only needed to shift the focus forward. As she moved through her morning routine, a quiet determination settled in her bones. Today would be different. Today, she would take the lead. Rusty's recovery had become not just a mission but a catalyst for her own growth, and she intended to leverage that momentum. When she arrived at the barn, the rancher was already inside, his frame illuminated in slices of morning light. He was speaking softly to Rusty, who seemed to favor the attention. The animal leaned in, nuzzling the rancher's hand. For a fleeting moment, the sight evoked a pang of yearning in Sarah. She thought about the connections we form in life, how sometimes nurturing another brings out the best in ourselves. "Looks like you're getting the hang of it," she said, stepping closer. He turned, catching her eye as he nodded slowly. "Rusty's a good listener." "Then let's make today about listening, both to Rusty and to ourselves," she declared, the words leaving her mouth before her mind processed them. "I've been thinking we should assess where we go from here." "Where do you suggest we go?" he asked, crossing his arms defensively. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the moment. "We need to establish a long-term plan for Rusty, and in the process, figure out our own strengths. Teaching, like I mentioned earlier, could be a step. What do you think about sharing your skills with people who need them?" A flicker of interest crossed his face, but it quickly retreated behind a wall of resistance. "That's easier said than done, and honestly, I'm not sure if I can tap into all that." "Why not start with a small group of our friends?" she proposed, sensing a glimmer of potential beneath his hesitance. "We can create a safe space, just enough to test the waters. It might help you see your own capability." His brow furrowed with doubt. "And if I fail? What if no one shows up?" She stepped closer, narrowing the space between them. "What if they do? What if it lights a fire in you that you didn't know existed? Remember our first days working with Rusty? You've already overcome challenges. This could be a leap for both of us." His silence lingered, heavy with possibilities and fears. Sarah could see the tension coiling in him, a mix of apprehension and desire. They had both faced disappointments. The difference was that she was ready to tackle hers head-on, while he appeared tethered to past failures. "Let's channel that fear into something productive," she urged, her voice filled with conviction. "We owe it to ourselves, and to Rusty, to try." As they talked, a sense of urgency began to build around them, thickening the air with every tentative step toward understanding. Outside, the fog lingered, seemingly mirroring the obstacles between them. Rusty nudged his head against Sarah's arm, as if sensing the charge brewing in the barn. "What if we make it a kind of retreat? We could find out what others think about handling horses, and in doing so, rediscover ourselves," she suggested, her heart racing at the idea. "How do we even start?" he asked, visibly intrigued now. Sarah paused, watching him, marveling at how far he had come in such a short period. "We'll create a flyer, maybe put out word on social media, one step at a time. Are you in?" As the rancher considered her proposition, Sarah noticed the shift in him. The uncertainty still flickered in his eyes, but a new resolve crept in, a deeper contemplation of his own mastery over his past disappointments. And then the moment froze, heavy with questions. Could they truly forge a new path, or was this yet another illusion of progress? The uncertainty was palpable, hanging in the air like the morning fog, an invitation to allow both vulnerability and aspiration to collide. As they moved to draft the flyer, the barn felt more electric than it had before, a space of evolution. But as Sarah looked up at the rancher, she couldn't shake the growing feeling that their journey was only just beginning. Would they be able to navigate the minefields of their pasts while pushing forward into a united future? The prospect loomed heavy over them, the sunlight slowly breaking through, casting long shadows that stirred the air with anticipation. The time had come to step beyond their fears and grasp the potential that lay ahead. But would that leap of faith shift their trajectory forever? The day pressed forward, the fog reluctant to release its grip on the ranch, yet an undercurrent of determination surged within Sarah. They worked side by side, gathered around the small makeshift table in the barn, the sunlight filtering through the slats to cast warm patches on their project. As they began drafting the flyer, something inside her ignited, a blend of responsibility and exhilaration that she had rarely felt before. "Let's keep it simple," she suggested, pen hovering over the paper. "We want people to feel welcomed, not overwhelmed. Maybe we highlight what they can learn about horse care as much as what we're hoping to share." The rancher's brow furrowed as he considered her words, a flicker of interest sparking behind the shield he maintained. "What if they ask too many questions? I don't want to look like I don't know enough." Sarah leaned forward, motivated by his vulnerability. "Then let's embrace it. Every question is an opportunity for growth, for both you and them. You're skilled at understanding horses. This is just another form of that." His body language shifted, the defensive posture beginning to relax as he even chuckled softly. "Easy for you to say. You're the one who's always a step ahead." "Hardly," she replied, determination steadying her voice. "I'm just not afraid to put myself out there, and I think you shouldn't be either." What she said was true. She realized the harder challenge lay not just in helping him see his worth, but in dismantling her own fears in the process. They were two sides of the same struggle, the echo of their insecurities resonating through the barn. As they worked, a sense of possibility began to eclipse her doubts. They listed familiar faces who might join them, a few old friends, some neighbors who had expressed curiosity about the ranch. Even though Sarah had no clue how this retreat would unfold, the anticipation buzzed like static around them. "Maybe we could plan a mini lesson on how to handle Rusty," she proposed, looking at him with excitement. "Your experience, combined with my teaching skills, could really resonate." He hesitated, shaking his head slightly. "What if Rusty isn't ready? What if I can't show them what to do?" "Then we adapt. It's about being open and finding new paths through unexpected challenges." Her heart raced with hope. This wasn't merely about Rusty's recovery, but also about fostering a place where both of them could learn to rise above their fears together. As they finalized the flyer, Sarah's confidence solidified. She felt a flicker of self-assurance like never before, a certainty that she had found a purpose extending beyond the barn. She was no longer just here to help Rusty. She was crafting opportunities for connection and growth, not only for him but for the rancher too. "Okay, let's do this," he murmured, his voice steadier than it had been. But her heart thudded with uncertainty. Could the rancher fully grasp what she saw in him? In the weeks that followed, excitement morphed into anxious planning. Each shared laugh in the barn, each tentative question traded, reinforced the bond they were developing. Yet beneath that thin veil of optimism lay unexamined fears threatening to unravel their progress. The landscape of their relationship shifted, a delicate balance of hope and hesitation. Just as they prepared to distribute the flyers, Sarah's gut tightened with apprehension. The anticipation that had buoyed her now seemed tinged with the promise of failure. What if nobody came? What if this retreat revealed only their limitations rather than their strengths? In that moment, the ground below felt uncertain. This was a blurring of roles, their vulnerabilities now laid bare. Sarah felt the weight of what was at stake. If the retreat faltered, would that mean they had stumbled back into their pasts, locked within their self-imposed limitations? But just as she was about to voice her concerns, the rancher met her gaze, a flicker of his calculated resolve sparking back to life. "You ready for this? No matter what happens, we've got each other." Her heart raced anew, oscillating between fear and exhilaration. The path ahead was murky, fraught with their doubts and insecurities. Yet, in the face of these uncertainties, the grounding truth remained. They were stepping into the unknown together, intertwined in a journey laden with potential. Now, as they prepared for their leap into the future, the fog seemingly thickened outside, but deep within, they stirred towards something greater. They were standing at the precipice, ready to face not just the retreat, but the evolution of themselves. "Let's make this something truly transformative." "Together," she replied, her voice steady. Yet was this enough to truly dismantle the walls they had built around their hearts? Only time would tell. As they moved toward their impending reality, the anticipation loomed. What awaited them on the other side of their fears? The morning of the retreat dawned, uncharacteristically clear, as if the universe conspired to grant them the clarity they so desperately sought. Sarah stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her shirt, cringing at the reflection that stared back. Was this the face that would inspire others? Her fingers trembled, betraying her nervous anticipation. Beneath the surface of her excitement lay a tangled amalgam of doubt and fear. "Get it together, Sarah," she muttered to herself, recalling the enthusiasm sparked the day they drafted the flyer. Yet that momentum felt distant now, overtaken by the specter of what could go wrong. What if they were met with indifference? What if the rancher faltered during their demonstrations? More importantly, what if she failed to lead them both into the transformative experience she envisioned? Outside, the ranch was stirring. The sound of hooves against the ground felt like a heartbeat, echoing the agricultural rhythm around her. She took a deep breath and stepped out into the fresh morning air, letting it bolster her resolve. She joined the rancher, who was busy setting up chairs around a shaded area near the barn. He looked up and offered a wry smile. "Looks like we're about to find out what we're really made of," he said, the humor in his voice just masking his own apprehension. "Yes, indeed," she replied, the familiar two-way dance of self-doubt and ambition beginning once more. As they prepared, Sarah felt the weight of their fears pressing upon them, a tangible entity tightening their chests. Each guest's arrival chipped away at their illusions of grandeur. Friends and acquaintances trickled in, some expressing genuine interest, while others wore expressions of shallow obligation. A knot tightened in Sarah's stomach as they began mingling. Their superficial conversations amplified an unsettling silence. "Do you think they'll engage?" she asked the rancher, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," he confessed, sweeping a hand across the dimly lit barn. "But it's too late to back out now." His words hung in the air, a testament to their shared commitment, but also to their shared fears. With every passing minute, the gap between expectation and reality broadened. What if their efforts to break away from past limitations crumbled before their eyes? The first session began with Sarah trying to break the ice. "Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to have you here today to share in our love for horses and learn a thing or two." Her voice wavered slightly, reflecting the tension beneath her optimistic veneer. As she moved through the activities, the rancher's cautious participation ignited sparks of curiosity among the guests. However, when Rusty was brought out, the tension thickened. The rancher's anxiousness radiated off him like an electric charge, causing Sarah to reevaluate the plan they had crafted. "Maybe we should start with easier exercises," he suggested, watching Rusty's ears flicker anxiously. "No, this is an opportunity. Let's introduce him as part of our learning." Sarah hesitated but forged ahead, determined not just for Rusty but for both of them. As the participants interacted with Rusty, the rancher's passion emerged, transforming the dynamic. The gentle way he educated others on horse care began to dissolve the fears he had previously articulated. She felt the energy shift. Questions were asked, and reactions began flooding in. This wasn't solely about Rusty or overcoming their limitations. It was about the interconnectedness of their journeys, real and palpable. Yet deep inside, she battled her own dilemma. What if this was merely an illusion of progress? The nagging voice whispered that the expectations they'd crafted would inevitably fall short, and she felt the pressure to keep the momentum of the day alive, propelling them both forward. As the session progressed, Sarah watched the rancher teach, his confidence steadily rising as he found his voice amid the chaos of anxious minds. She marveled at how he tackled questions, weaving in his experiences with Rusty. But as she stepped back to observe, she felt a creeping realization settle in the pit of her stomach. Perhaps the real purpose of this retreat was not merely to teach others, but for them to reflect on who they were becoming in the process. Just as she began to grasp this truth, the rancher glanced over at her, eyes alight with inspiration. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" "Yes," she replied, her heart racing, resonating with both hope and uncertainty. But a sudden fluctuation of Rusty's body caused her breath to catch. Was this merely an indication of an impending larger challenge? As the day twisted further into the unknown, her heart raced with the thought, what if they both faced more than just their fears? What deeper transformation awaited them if they continued to lean into vulnerability? Before she could ponder it further, the urgent murmurs of their guests began to blend into an overwhelming wave of anticipation. The moment drew closer, a moment that would test the very fabric of their newfound resolve. Would they step beyond mere fears into something profound? The retreat was unfurling toward its climax, yet Sarah sensed another challenge lurking just beyond the veil. The sun began its slow descent, casting shadows that danced across the barn, mirroring the hesitance and excitement pulsing through Sarah's veins. The retreat had ignited connections between the rancher, Rusty, and the guests, yet Sarah felt palpably aware of the looming challenges. This was not merely about Rusty's recovery or providing knowledge. It was about navigating the routes of transformation, both personal and collective. As they transitioned from activities into discussions, Sarah realized the true significance of their endeavor. This was a crucible, testing their limits, revealing their vulnerabilities, and transforming their fear into empowerment. The guests were engaged, and their laughter mingled with moments of silence as they absorbed new perspectives. The rancher spoke with passion about Rusty's journey, sharing stories of resilience and strength. It forged a recognition in her mind. They were not just teaching, they were growing alongside their guests, each story creating ripples of genuine connection. Yet still standing at the edge of her own uncertainties, doubt whispered at her. What if today unraveled? What if the shadow of their fears outshone the light they had built? A flicker of anxiety gnawed at her, but the rancher's gaze caught hers, igniting something deeper. He was shining, his newfound confidence radiating a warmth that began to quiet her internal storm. "How's it feeling for you?" she asked him between sessions, as other participants immersed themselves in the lessons. "It's liberating," he admitted, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "For the first time, I'm not just existing within my past. I'm redefining what I can do here." A smile crested her lips. His growth was palpable and potent. This was a moment she had envisioned, a moment of accomplishment for them both. She marveled at how far they had come, from shared trepidation to standing shoulder to shoulder in a collective journey of discovery. But even as inspiration blossomed, an acute sense of urgency arose within her. What if they could not sustain this momentum? The thought clutched at her heart, but then a deeper realization emerged. It was not about perfection, it was about progression. With every teaching moment, every laugh shared, they dismantled fear, fragment by fragment. It wasn't just about their individual battles with self-doubt, but how they could learn to navigate those shadows together. As the rancher further engaged with the guests, elaborating on equine psychology, she felt herself shift into a mentor role, supporting him as he flourished. That night, as they gathered by a small bonfire with their newfound friends, Sarah learned to let go of her anxiety and welcome possibility. The camaraderie binding them allowed each voice to be heard, and she observed connections that transcended their initial intentions, lives intertwining through shared stories and adventures. She saw not just Rusty's rescue, but the rescue of her own dreams, a reclamation of purpose that inspired those around them. "Are you ready for a larger role?" she asked him during a quieter moment, watching the flames flicker between them. "I think I am," he replied, his voice steady, mirrored by the resolve etched in his features. "Today changed something important in me. It feels good to embrace that." "Let's capitalize on that," she said, heart thudding with anticipation. "We can plan regular workshops. We can turn this knowledge into a community effort for horses and ourselves." As the warmth from the fire cloaked them, Sarah felt a profound sense of achievement wash over her. She was no longer just conquering self-doubt. She had discovered a partnership grounded in mutual respect and shared aspirations. They had evolved, transformed, and now, as a force combined, they stood poised before the horizon of future possibilities. In the days that followed, they solidified their roles within the community, transforming the barn into a space for mentoring and healing. Sarah actively documented the journey through journal entries and video clips, sensing the stories of Rusty's recovery intertwining with the narratives of the participants. Each new session brought fresh insights, reinforcing her identity as an educator, caretaker, and most importantly, a fierce advocate for healing, both for others and for herself. The rancher, now brimming with confidence, took the lead alongside her, finding his voice amidst the clamor of enthusiastic participants. Their partnership had become a model of growth, a true testament that overcoming one's limitations yields far-reaching rewards. With every milestone, they established newfound authority within their community, where genuine respect rose from shared experiences. Months passed, and as the tendrils of connection between them flourished, Sarah achieved a pivotal realization. Her worth was no longer tethered to the approval of others. She had grown into someone resilient, someone who proved herself through action, devotion, and the unwavering belief that transformation was possible. Rusty was thriving, and so was she, confirmed and confident. And yet, despite reaching these heights, she understood that this journey was not exclusive to her or the rancher alone. It was a communal movement of healing and growth. As the final session for the year approached, there was excitement in the air, a bubbling enthusiasm that suggested transcending limitations and welcoming possibilities. Rusty stood proudly in the barn, his vibrant energy reflecting the renewed spirit of their partnership. Together, they prepared for a celebration, a culmination of their hard work and dedication to not just rescue a horse, but to uplift an entire community. In that space, surrounded by laughter and cheers, every element of their journey came full circle. Sarah stood there, heart swelling with pride. She was no longer that uncertain girl battling for approval. She was a recognized leader, a strong advocate for healing, and an embodiment of transformation. This was her moment, a tribute to the depth of growth and the excellence she had cultivated. She was where she belonged, and as she looked at the rancher beside her, she realized that they had discovered not only their own paths, but also the beauty of walking them together. This moment deserved to be shared. You need to subscribe now to receive exclusive emotional stories like this one and witness how personal transformations unfold. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us spread the message of resilience. Comment your thoughts and reactions about this concluding chapter. What do you think Sarah and the rancher will achieve next? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who could use a dose of inspiration and encouragement. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. The opportunity for greatness is just a click away.